Haunted dolls aren't just an American thing, they're an international thing. Sure, in the United States we have dolls like Annabelle and Robert and even Chucky if we want to go more on the fictional side, but there are more terrifying dolls out there in the world, like Okiku from Japan. You might need to keep the lights on when you go to bed tonight. Hello my spooky crew and welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel if this is your first time here. My name is Alex and welcome to my spooky corner of the internet. Before we start, thank you all for your support ever since my haunted hospital episode aired. I've been overwhelmed with positive messages and I'm so thankful for you all. I also want to give a shout out to my Buy Me a Coffee supporters, Brad, Jonni, and Michelle. Creating spooky content, plus working a day job, plus writing a book means that I'm working a lot of hours, so any coffee I can get, I greatly appreciate. And if you would like to get me a cup of coffee and get a shout out in my next video, go to buymeacoffee.com/thespookystuff. All right, let's get started. Since getting my own haunted doll, Madison, I've been really interested in haunted doll lore, so I've been trying to learn as much about haunted dolls as I can. Of course, I started with Annabelle, one of the most famous haunted dolls of all, and of course I moved on to Robert. Robert creeps me out more than Annabelle, to be honest. Anyway, given that it's spooky season in Japan right now, I thought this was a good time to start talking about Japanese ghost lore and spooky stories. I'm a quarter Japanese on my mom's side, and I've always been drawn to Japanese culture. So to tell the story of Okiku the haunted doll, we need to jump into our time machines and head to the early 1900s. In the early 1900s, Japan was very much still attached to the beliefs of feudalism, as well as its ancient mythology and lore that made Japan so culturally rich. What is so fascinating about Japan during this period of time is that ghosts, demons, and monsters were very much an accepted belief. Not only that, but these entities and creatures were believed to have lived among humans, and people just had to deal with it. Why the history lesson? It's important to know for the story, so here we go. In 1918, a 17-year-old teenager by the name of Eikichi Suzuki was visiting Sapporo, Japan, and he was visiting for a marine exhibition. The teenage boy was walking around the town in the Tanuki Koji shopping district when he saw this doll in the window, and the doll stood about 16 inches tall. Immediately, he was drawn to the doll. The doll was wearing a kimono and its hair was cut in an okappa hairstyle. Eikichi wanted to buy the doll for his 2-year-old little sister Okiku. When he returned home, he gave the doll to his little sister. The toddler loved the doll. Okiku loved the doll so much that she named it after herself. They did everything together. Okiku the daughter and Okiku the doll never left each other's side. Okiku ate with the doll, bathed with it, slept with it, played with it. I mean, everything that Okiku did, the doll was with her. Okiku even started treating the doll like her little sister. Sadly, about a year later, Okiku became gravely ill and died. And what's even more depressing is that Okiku died a terrible death. She was in an excruciating amount of pain and she was gasping for air. And as Okiku breathed her last breath, she was clutching to the doll. Her family was devastated. They wanted to bury Okiku the doll with their daughter, but due to local laws, they couldn't do it. So the Suzukis placed Okiku the doll on the family altar so that they could pray for the little girl's soul every day. And this is pretty traditional in Japan. After they placed the doll on the family altar, the Suzukis noticed that there were some weird things going on. The most notable thing was that the doll's hair and nails were growing. How is this possible? A doll's hair and nails shouldn't be able to grow. And this didn't happen while Okiku the daughter was still alive. It only started after Okiku died. The doll's hair, which was once shoulder length, was now grown past her waist and had split ends at the bottom. The Suzukis took this as a sign that their daughter's restless spirit was possessing the doll. Like I said, this had never happened before while the daughter was alive. And the family also started to have dreams about Okiku the doll, and the next morning when they woke up, they would see that the doll was at their bedside. Meaning someone was moving the doll while they were asleep, or the doll was moving by itself. And the Suzukis also started experiencing supernatural events like flickering lights, the lights are turning on and off. They were hearing strange voices, and they kept hearing banging around the house. And these events would intensify around anniversaries like Okiku's birthday or the date of her death. So the family had the doll examined by spiritual leaders, and the consensus was that their daughter's spirit was either trapped in the doll or willingly possessing the doll. Either way, the daughter's spirit was attached to the doll in some way. In 1938, the Suzukis were getting ready to move away from Hokkaido, Japan, and they were conflicted about bringing the doll with them. Now, their daughter Okiku was buried nearby the altar, and the family was pretty sure that the reason why the doll had such incredible supernatural powers and having its hair and nails grow was because their daughter's grave was nearby. And they didn't want the doll to lose its supernatural powers by moving it away from Okiku's grave. But also, if the daughter was possessing the doll and was only there because the doll was near the grave, then they didn't want to leave Okiku behind. So there was a lot of mixed feelings. They didn't want to bring the haunted doll with them, but they also felt like they couldn't leave her behind. So as a compromise, the family put Okiku the doll under the care of the priests at the mannen-ji temple, which is a Buddhist temple in the town of Iwamizawa, Japan. And by this point, the priests at the temple had heard about Okiku the doll, and they were honored to take care of her. So the family moved away, Okiku the doll is at the mannen-ji temple, and it wasn't long before one of the priests was visited by Okiku in his dreams, and she asked him to cut her hair and trim her nails. And that tradition has continued even to this day. Okiku has to get regular haircuts and regular manicures. And as Okiku's story has reached the world and more people have become aware of her, you can bet that she's drawing in a lot of tourists. And as Okiku gets more visitors, her supernatural powers have intensified. She appears in the dreams of not only the priests, but tourists as well. And not only has her hair continued to grow, reports say that it's now growing faster. Now, there is speculation that the priests and Okiku's family had the doll's hair examined by scientists, and it was determined that the doll hair belonged to the hair of a human child. And probably the craziest and freakiest thing of all is that some tourists have been driven mad by the apparent fact that if you look into Okiku's partially open mouth, you can see baby teeth growing. Isn't that a great story? So now that I've told the spooky story, here's my take on it. No one does horror like Japan. I think this probably is based on some truth, but I think a lot of it has turned into a myth. Being the budding genealogist that I am, I actually tried to find Akichi Suzuki, but I didn't get any hits. I also tried to find Okiku Suzuki as well. Again, no hits. I haven't been able to find birth certificates or death records of either two. And there's also some inconsistencies with the story. We know that Okiku died of a really terrible illness. I've read some reports that it was yellow fever. I've read other reports that it was pneumonia, and I read another report that she died of the flu. Also, in some of the accounts, Akichi is 17, but in other accounts, he's 18. And I also found one story where his name isn't even Akichi, but Akisa. And that goes the same for his sister. Now, the consensus is that his sister's name was Okiku, but I found several accounts where her name was Kikuko or Kikuko. My Japanese pronunciation is not that great. Keep in mind, the nature of Okiku's death was very devastating and traumatic, and she died a terrible death while holding the doll. In Japan, the way that you die is extremely important. Japan does have their own ghost lore, and the closest thing to, I guess, the Western equivalent of a ghost is the yurei. And in Japanese beliefs, an onryo is a vengeful spirit that can cause physical harm to people and objects. It doesn't sound like Okiku was an onryo, but something was definitely up. Now, the doll is definitely real, and you can visit her at the mannen-ji temple. Now, when it comes to the hair, I'm not sure how dolls were made in the early 1900s, especially 1900s Japan, but I'm betting that the hair was likely made from human hair or horse hair. And I don't think dead hair continues to grow after it's been snipped. So if it's true that the hair keeps growing and the nails keep growing, that's pretty remarkable. But also, what were the nails made of? I mean, Okiku is a porcelain doll, so I'm assuming the nails would be porcelain too. So yeah, it's pretty spooky. And Okiku's story has inspired thousands of horror novels, movies, and even kabuki plays. And in the more fictionalized and dramatized versions, Okiku has also been reported to laugh and wiggle around a room, which, ugh. If you do decide to visit Okiku at the mannen-ji temple, then be sure to ask permission before you take her photo, and you might want to do some extra shielding work so that she doesn't invade your dreams. What do you think of this story? Let me know in the comments. And before you go, don't forget to click on that subscribe button, give this video a like, and click on that notification bell so you'll be the first to know when I upload a new video. And feel free to share this video with your friends and family who also enjoy the spooky stuff and Japanese haunted dolls. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next round.